Yeah. So good afternoon, everyone. And thank you all for joining us on this webinar. I'm Manish Jain, and on behalf of Envint, a warm welcome to you all to our second webinar of the three-part series on ESG integration. Now, many of you in the audience were with us in the first webinar that was held in October. So welcome back. A couple of housekeeping announcements before we begin. Please ensure that your mics are on mute. And we will have time for questions at the end, but please do feel free to use the chat box anytime during the presentation, and we will visit those questions later. Next slide. The objective of this series is to delve and discuss as to how can organizations, and to be specific corporates, approach the subject of ESG integration. And to set the context as a starting point, in our first webinar, we had scanned scores of JDs or job descriptions for positions seeking ESG and sustainability professionals who represented all such ESG professionals having multiple responsibilities, some of which are on the screen, as a common thread from all these JDs that we scanned. And as you see, it is a multidisciplinary role with elements of strategy, goal setting, targets, data collection and monitoring, communication, project management, and even coordination across these functions. Moving on, in the first webinar, the objective of Winnie was to get guidance on laying a strong foundation for ESG. And she got this from her mentors, and the key takeaways that were there are summarized in this slide. To spell them out, focusing on the critical areas with well-defined boundaries, which help channelize management bandwidth where needed the most, more so when the concept of double materiality now intersects between ESG and financial metrics. The three pillars of integration and the importance of them, which is strategic, operational, and cultural across functions. And lastly, a very realistic and pragmatic goal setting, which helps prepare a roadmap for the future. However, now that the foundation is set, Winnie is still faced with some issues, and these pertain to implementing the ESG at an organization or the ESG rollout, which, if you can say, how to develop metrics and KPIs, how to plan targets against these KPIs and then roll them out across the organization. And most importantly, how to build capacity and training in the team who do this. So let's see how we can guide her to navigate around this.
Thank you, Manish. We are privileged to have with us ESG leaders from two iconic organizations today. I'd like to specifically highlight that both are carbon neutral organizations as well, and having started their sustainability journeys much.
You're on mute.
Anand, you are on mute.
Sorry, could you hear me before?
Yeah, I think it's you mentioned everyone that how both Infosys and North are carbon.
So Bose Varghese is the head of green initiatives at Infosys. He manages corporate ESG programs, including the corporate RE100 and carbon neutral commitments. Under his leadership, Infosys won the 2019 UN Global Climate Action Award and became carbon neutral in 2020, 30 years ahead of the Paris Agreement aligned timeline. Bose has extensively worked in the US and India in the areas of energy, environment, sustainability, climate change, and clean tech. He's actively involved in climate action policy advocacy globally. And thank you, Bose, very much for joining us today. Pleasure to have you here. Anil Chaudhary is the head of ESG at True North, one of India's oldest PE funds. In his current role, he drives ESG integration in True North's own operation, as well as its partner companies in diverse sectors. Anil is passionate about sustainability and responsible investing and comes with a vast experience of 35 plus years in areas such as credit, forex, agricultural banking, warehousing, and collateral management. He believes that embedding ESG factors meaningfully in any organization's operations makes it truly sustainable with potential to generate immense value for all stakeholders. Thank you, Anil, for being with us here. And with that, I will now hand over to Bose to take us through the Infosys experience and how he can mentor Winnie in her organization. Over to you, Bose.
Thank you, Anand. If I may put up my presentation. Yeah, is it visible, the presentation?
Yes, please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So, hello everyone, good afternoon. My name is Bose Varghese, and I'm happy to be here with you today. So when I was trying to put this together, hold on. Why my slides are not moving? Okay. So I had a big challenge because, as many of you know, we are quite evolved in this space. What sitting here today, what I may see and I may view, we are at a different level, it may not be a fair take on things, and we have started this journey long time ago. So here is a snapshot of our journey so far. In fact, our journey started way back in 2008. If you look at our website, you will see, of course, we until recently we called ESG, we called sustainability. It's a new terminology, ESG, and thanks to mostly the investor community for making the terminology ESG more pervasive. So 2008 we started, and you can see along the way we have so many milestones. And in 2020 we became carbon neutral. When we became carbon neutral, we also, that was a huge milestone that we achieved after more than a decade of sustainable journey. And at that time, we had actually looked ahead and set 2030 goals as well. So where we are today, we are a net zero company. We are committed to 100% renewable energy. Today we are at about 50%. We have, as I said, in 2020, we launched our 2030 vision, where we, across E, S, and G, all three baskets, we have enhanced our ambitions. And across various ESG rating agencies, we are one of the highest ranked among all these, including first time CRISIL released a rating for India last year, and we were on the top of the list. Now I will come to, as a practitioner, building a program, and essentially some of the points that you have to keep in mind. You have to build a program that ultimately you have to make disclosures on. So that means you need data, and then you need metrics, and and then they connect back to your important aspects of your business that you want to build a program around, and that is where the materiality comes into play. I'm sure you touched upon this in the previous session. There is this new concept of double materiality. Some of you may have heard about it. So there is a materiality when someone like Mr. Chaudhary, they are looking from outside to inside to an organization like us, and their perception of risks and opportunities in the ESG space may not be at this point exactly the same as me sitting inside and looking at materiality, an outward view. In the ideal world, there should be the same, but there is this new concept of double materiality. So then you build a program to manage all your impacts. And today, with an increasing focus on investor community on ESG topics, you are, likely, or you must be focusing more on those that have a financial impact. Not all the time you will see a direct impact, but if you do the materiality right, you will see, or you will come up with those topics that have a financial impact on the business. And then, there are a myriad of disclosure standards. Most of you must be following GRI, and some of you may be following SASB. There is TCFD for climate, alone. You must also be reporting through CDP. Some of you may be reporting to Dow Jones. And whether you, based on your public reporting, you may be getting rated by various agencies. So, the other thing is ESG is an evolving space. What we did 10 years ago is not exactly the same as what we do today. And the way we look at things is also not the same. And ultimately, whatever you do, it has to reflect in your business strategy. And if it is not, it is just, it's not really part of your core business. And ESG today, it doesn't have a standalone, future. It is clearly integrated into business. So how we approach it, I think you will be approaching it the same way, looking at your materiality. I will not spend much time, and you know how this is done. And the key is to, based on this materiality and based on your stakeholder universe, how do you present your ESG program connecting to this stakeholder universe? And I will go back to this, and then I'll come back. So, after materiality, and we have many of these topics which you are familiar with. There is climate change. There is corporate governance, data privacy, diversity and inclusion, enabling tech at scale, data privacy. They are the most important. Then the next layer, tech for good, wastewater, energizing local communities. These are our material topics. Now, the way we have done it, we have grouped them into, how we approach the clients. That is the business innovation strategy space. How we approach or how we use our ESG there. Being a people company, that is our human capital side, how we use it there. Being a corporate citizen, that is your social capital side, mostly attached to the foundation and through CSR, and of course there are a lot of programs run internally by the company itself. Being an environmental steward, that is the environmental capital. So essentially, my team takes care of that. Then being an ethically strong organization, that's run through the legal and company secretary's office, and that is the corporate governance aspect of it. So this is how we see it. We see it through this lens. But all the topics that we have seen in the materiality are covered through this. And below internal ownership teams, this is how we have structured it. So now I'm going to go back. So you need to build a program. And what the program is, I will give a little more insight into what the program is in the next slide. And it will have your topics, materiality. You have done the materiality. You have various key topics that are coming into it. It could be diversity and inclusion. It could be child labor. It could be fair trade and procurement. Depending on your business, it could be it could be very different from what we have as an IT company. And based on that, you will have, you may have a policy, you will have different goals, different targets, And, all that is part of your program. And then initially you will have probably some experts, taking the lead and running it. Eventually what will happen is, there will be a team established around it, and it will be teams. And in an evolved state like we have in Infosys today, it becomes part of the DNA. It becomes embedded into the culture of the company, and everybody is aware of what we are doing, why we are doing it, and the fact that we need to do things in a certain way because we have this ESG program. And then to drive, obviously you need the resources, that includes people and budget or money. Then you need oversight and that governance. It could be at the board level, it could be at the executive level, like that. Then the program obviously leads to public disclosures and other communication. Now here is the essence of it. This is something I have, put together. And how do you create a program, and what all will go into it, and how do you move from, beginning to a very mature program, or from one point to the other. And I think those who are listening to this, and if you look internally, if you have what you call a sustainability program or an ESG program, and you will have components of all these. And some of the maturity and where you are is determined by at what point you are in with respect to some of these aspects. A very mature program, the program coverage, if you are a big corporation with operations in different geographies, you have other subsidiaries, ideally you have a program that covers that entire universe. And what that means, what you decided to run, say you have decided to run a employee program, for example, and that is running across the corporation, including your subsidiaries, all of them. And there is somebody running that, somebody responsible, and there is data flowing back to you. So that becomes an aspect of program that runs through this boundary. And so the physical boundary, within the business, sometimes when you start, you are starting with the corporate office, maybe your home country, and then slowly expanding the scope. And sometimes you are just looking at your within your own premises kind of business, and then you expand to your supply chain. So so that's how you really grow and mature in the program. A mature program will have all these elements. The program coverage itself, you have identified 8 or 10 material topics that are really material to you across E, S, and G. And you have a fair grip on only 3 or 4 of them. Then you have some distance to go, and you have to build programs around the other aspects, and you have to propagate that program from typically inside out. You start wherever you are, your corporate office, your home country, and then outwards, and then the program runs, and you get data back, and so you are able to report on that particular program. Then there is digitization. Today, this is one of the mega trends. Like everything else, ESG is getting digitized. A good program will be founded on proper policies. By processes, I mean actually properly institutionalizing. Otherwise, there would, for a large company like Infosys with operations across the board, if you don't have a process to institutionalize how you run certain things, if I am doing so many things today for this company, if tomorrow I move out, what happens? Will there be continuity? Will there be consistency? So you need to have certain processes, documented processes, maybe some management systems in place. Governance in a mature program, you'll have governance at the highest level. For example, Infosys has, 2 committees looking into ESG. There is an ESG committee with board members, and there's a CSR committee with board members, and everything runs through them. They give us the guidance. You should have a fair assessment, fair view, and a process to actually at certain frequency that you have decided to do your risk and opportunity assessment, and then go that and put that into business strategy. I can give you an example. We have realized over the years we have done so much, and whoever has come to visit us internally at Infosys, or whoever we have spoken to, they were amazed at the work we have done, and then they said, "Why don't you take this to a market?" And we looked at the market and looked at the opportunities, and earlier this year we actually launched global services offering sustainability. And of course, a risk, especially TCFD when it comes to climate change and climate risk. If you're listed in the US, you are Form 20F, you have to file the perceived risk. And most of the investor community, this is one area they are clearly focusing on now. What are the climate related risks that your investment portfolio holds, and how you really hedge? I'm sure Mr. Chaudhary will be talking about that, how they tackle that. So you need to have a fair view of the risk, and not just risk qualitatively, or I have a serious risk. You used to do this grading of risk, a high risk, or it's a risk grade 4 risk, grade 4, very high risk. What does that mean? What is the financial implication for a company with $20 billion or $50 billion of revenue? What does it mean in terms of revenue risk? Does it translate into 5 million or 50 million? How does it work? So that is something a mature program will do. Then business strategy, as I said, will have all this taken into consideration. Another key aspect of a mature program is leadership KRA and remuneration linked to this ESG KRA. And here in Infosys, a lot of people like me, our end-to-end responsibility is this, and of course it rolls out all the way up to COO, and everything is getting into everything is getting accounted for. Then full disclosure. So that is another trait of a mature program. So if you have 10 material topics, and you mandatorily report on all of those, and either you follow GRI or any other framework, you follow the framework and make a full disclosure. And then, as you become mature, and if you are a big business, obviously you will get rated by various ESG rating agencies based on publicly available information. Some you can proactively participate. You can also get ratings done by third parties on a paid basis. Once you move into this, you are maturing, your program is maturing. And ultimately, as I said, along the way from the beginning, you begin to slowly institutionalize the program, and there is a cultural transformation. And a mature program will definitely have a sort of fully internalized and institutionalized ESG program, and culturally embedded into the DNA of the org. And I haven't really talked about how you, for a beginner, what are the steps, or someone in the middle of the game, what they should do. But, if you look at this, I think your answer is there. I think all these areas have to be simultaneously pushed forward for the program to mature. In any area you lag behind, it will take time for you to move up. And that's why I always say this is a journey. I mean, just because a big company, a big corporation has a lot of money to spend, they just go out and hire the best people in the world. It's still not going to make a difference. It's still going to take time to build a good program, and ESG matures over time. So what we have done, I mean, this is again, after a decade of ESG journey, this is the next level that we have done. Just you can see some of the goals that we have taken. This is how we are proceeding. You can see very specific goals under environment. We are already carbon neutral, so we are committed to continue to be carbon neutral. So we are committed to reduce our scope 1, 2 by 75%, reduce our scope 3 by 30%, water waste, social, topics. Again, our commitments. Most of them are measurable numerical commitments, and then governance to be a an ethical company. So as somebody along the way, in the journey, you probably have commitments in these areas, probably much more moderate commitments. And a beginner would have probably only some of these elements, covered. So I already covered this, and I also wanted to say, when we looked at internally, when Infosys was building a program, our first focus was the e-basket. Honestly, we have built our program. We are just an IT company. We don't manufacture. So energy was a big deal, water was, and then waste. And so we had programs all, around these three. And energy and emissions are like two sides of the same coin for us. So we had, starting from 2008, we had set certain targets. We will reduce our per capita electricity by 5% this year or 3% this year. And we also had long-term goals, and split into year on year. And then we built our program. And as we matured, we realized, just like this, we need to, have a mature program, we need to address many other areas. And then, that's how we built this program. Today we have, I am proud to say, one of the most successful programs. We are not done yet. We definitely are not done yet. As I said, 2030 goals I've shown you. When we get there, we will have other goals. And so this is not really in fact, for the ESG practitioner or any company, there would not be any end. There will always be new levels to reach. So for anyone in this space, what I would suggest is, if you haven't, if you don't have a program, start a program. What you do, exactly how you do, it doesn't matter. You start a program, you keep that needle moving, and you will come to a point that you understand your program better and what needs to be done next, and then keep expanding, keep learning and keep moving. And you will eventually get there. This is a journey. There is a different way to start. You can have a very well laid out, well planned out journey also. Most people don't have the luxury to do that. And I don't think there will be anyone who is really, a beginner. Most companies have been doing many things from the past. They have programs on say energy efficiency or water efficiency on the people front. You know, you anyway comply with all the human rights and labor rights and all those things. So it's not like you are starting off the block. You already have a program. It's just building around it and what else needs to be done. How you need to propagate this, and build a robust program. So here it is. I have given this to Anand yesterday. My take on this, be like a video gamer. That's my take on it. Take the plunge, keep moving. So you understand your environment, make packs, collaborate, navigate the risk, grab any opportunities that you can. And when you think you made it, when you are a video gamer, when you think you made it, there is a next level. So there is always going to be a next level waiting for you in this game. So that's all I've got to say today. Hopefully anything else that I haven't covered, we can cover in the Q&A session. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, both. Let me just, if you could stop sharing your, yeah, thank you. So I'll just go back to this presentation. Give me 1 second, please. Yeah, so just summarizing what Bose said, for Vinny, ESG practice is the journey and one needs to be patient. The path to transformation can start from anywhere, from a beginner to an expert, and eventually it ends up being a cultural transformation. And one of the most interesting points for me was to enjoy this as a video game, to take the plunge, start doing something, understand the environment, make some changes, and grab the opportunities that come in the way. And it is very inspiring to see that even for a company like Infosys, there is a next level that is waiting, which can be achieved in ESG. So with that, I would now hand over to Anil for his experiences with True North and partner companies. Over to you, Anil.
Yeah, thank you, Anand, so much. And first of all, both Infosys is an inspiration in multiple ways for us in ESG, sustainability, and climate. What Infosys has been doing for the last several years, ESG and climate has become a buzzword for the last 5-7 years, but you have been doing it for the last several years. So hats off to your organization and the responsibility that you as an organization have shown. Wonderful work. And Anand, thanks to you and Manish for conceiving this, thinking of this, and thinking of us, True North, to make a presentation. And I'm truly very delighted to be part of this webinar, because True North has been since inception, but it was not a buzzword to say socially responsible. Our first vision itself in 1999 was to invest in and build socially responsible businesses. So while we may have adopted formal ESG policy much later, but we have been kind of a responsible investor almost since our inception. So this is a brief introduction of us very quickly. 99, one of the oldest independent private equity funds. We have focus sectors, particularly from 2015, we understood what are the sectors that we understand deeply and we can invest in. They are financial services, pharma, healthcare, consumer, and technology. 6 investment funds, and overall about 3 billion, including co-investments that we have raised. Yeah. So as I said, that since inception we have conceived building businesses which are socially responsible. We adopted ESG policy in 2018, and we are now driving ESG adoption across our portfolio. So it was from Fund 6 that we formally adopted, but what we are trying is to make True North as a whole bring on the ESG platform. And we understand that ESG is not about compliance. It is about aspiration. It is about taking yourself to the next level. And another important thing, I being from business, from banking, I have understood that it is nothing theoretical. Actually, it is a very commonsensical approach, and it should be very much part of the operations. One very important step that we took in 2020, when all of us were struggling with COVID, that was the year we utilized to really consolidate our understanding, our integration of ESG. We became a signatory to UNPRI, probably one of the first homegrown private equity funds to sign up to UNPRI. And signing up itself, you fill up the application, give the commitment and sign up. But it is actually a commitment, a huge commitment that you will integrate ESG in all your investing processes. You will make your investees also agree to integrate ESG practices, make them report, you report into your LPs, and you start to work in your community to expand ESG thoughts and considerations. But overall, we very firmly believe that ESG is nothing theoretical, nothing beyond what you do. It is very much part of your operation. And the earlier you understand this, more sustainable your business, not only from the planet and people's perspective, but even from your top line and EBITDA perspective, it will be sustainable. So these are some of the framework that we use. UNPRI definitely gives us a very important framework. But much before that are the National Guidelines for Responsible Business Conduct. Much before it became a mandatory guideline, we had started to adopt it in our businesses. We have also started to take note of the climate crisis. We have developed our climate risk assessment tool. We know, though True North by its own operation or the sector that it invests in do not have much carbon footprint, but whatever we create, while transition risk may not be there, but physical risk is there. Means what we say that you may not be impacting climate, but climate may be impacting you without any differentiation. So you should be prepared to understand what physical risks you run, and therefore you must integrate your risk thoughts in your overall risk management framework and start to report to board to bring accountability. One very important aspect is the UN Sustainable Development Goals. All of us know that the world is full of disparities. There are disparities of all hues and colors, and something that has been adopted in 2015 to be accomplished through 2030. India has been a leading achiever in UN SDGs accomplishment. We also want to integrate our thoughts on sustainability outcome on our mainstream private equity investments. And our overall responsible investment framework follows the best global framework like IFC, ADB, CDC, and UN Global Compact. So the important considerations that came out while we were kind of deciding on what should be material KPIs, what should be material to us, what should be material to our own operations and our partner companies' operations, what should we look at in the future investments. So we believe that a systematic response to ESG risks and opportunities is essential and in line with the values that we subscribe to. We have, in order to drive a roadmap, make a roadmap for True North, we have developed a baseline, and we have endeavored to understand the level of appreciation that to understand the level of appreciation on ESG factors within the firm and within the partner companies. So these are some of the factors that we have thought on the environmental, social, and governance, which for our own operation as well for our partner companies, that would be very, very important. That will continue to be very important. So this is the way we integrate ESG into our investment process. Pre-investment, we do preliminary screening to see, particularly after a particular deal goes through the investment thresholds and investment criteria, and we think that this is worth examining for our investment. So before we submit even a non-binding bid, we look at it from outside in on the sector, on the business, and see what kind of ESG risks that business could have. and then give a risk rating. And depending on if our non-binding bid gets accepted, goes through the targets management, then we go through the full throttle due diligence process. And depending on the sector, depending on what kind of investment we are looking at, are we looking at a majority, a controlled investment, or we are looking at a significant minority, or we are looking at an insignificant minority. Depending on that, there could be an ESG-DD, there may not be an ESG-DD. If there's an ESG-DD, whether it should be done by us internally, or we should take the help of an outside agency which is competent to do. But once the deal goes through and the investment goes through and we onboard the company, then we actually handhold them to in the adoption of the ESG policy. For that, we bring in a relevant external consultant. The discretion is left to the partner company's management. We bring 3-4 alternate consultants with relevant experience, and then one consultant chosen. They bring in, they start the work. First, they do the gap assessment, comparing to the global peers, the domestic peers. What are the benchmarks that they should look at? What are the material ESG issues, depending on the company's own operations, the sector, the materiality map of SASB, and all the relevant information is brought before the leadership team of the company to understand what could be the material ESG factors, of which 8, 10, 12, depending on the company, is taken. We encourage them to develop a vision, develop a roadmap, and then go through deciding on the policy, on the management system, deciding on the KPIs, what is most important that they should measure, how to monitor, put a governance structure, put a committee, how will they report, all of those processes. We ensure that while investing, we are not getting into any excluded activity which we have accepted in our policy. The excluded activity, which is part of the IFC, ADB, CDC, etc., excluded activity list. So our value creation plan that we have for our partner companies, these are the 6 factors that we actually look at, which help. So we believe that values, culture, and excellence are some of the core tenets of True North's investment strategy, and these tenets are further bolstered by through ESG. The foundation of our value creation plan for partner companies is based on values that will help create long-term sustainable business. So we expect that these attributes shall help partner companies in shaping their ESG focus areas. So we start with looking at their policy. We have determined that the important ESG policy, after they have an ESG policy in place, should be there. What we have seen that while companies may have these policies, but these policies are not operationalized. They remain only on paper, only in the books. There are no efforts made to operationalize them in the spirit in which the policies are framed. So we ensure, first of all, that policies have the necessary ingredients in them, number 1. Number 2, that the employees are aware. And number 3, there are regular programs to make people aware. We have seen examples that companies have a whistleblower policy for the last several years, not a single whistle is blown. Or a whistleblower policy does not have a confidentiality clause that if somebody is blowing a whistle, his name and identity will be kept confidential so that there is no retaliation. And therefore, people will be afraid to blow a whistle. So that way, or code of conduct, for example, which is again has or AML or anti-corruption or anti-bribery policy that a company has. Most of the good corporates have those policies, but ultimately the culture of the organization gets made when these policies are actually operationalized in the spirit that they are made. So we ensure Now we are in the process of developing standard templates so as to ensure that our partner companies have the policies which all the necessary ingredients. So in order to ensure that the ESG is taken, ESG implementation is taken seriously, we ensure that there is proper governance structure that is put in place. That becomes part of the ESG policy and the management system itself, which is typically headed by the CEO. And one CEO heads with all the senior leaders of the team being part of the committee, then one would be reasonably assured of required seriousness and accountability. We help them ensure that they look at developing their long-term roadmap, because we believe that while our ownership period could be limited to 5 years, 7 years, but they are a perpetual entity. And so we should look at encouraging them to institutionalize the ESG and the ESG deliverables with long term in mind. We also help them to understand that an ESG head properly assigns the responsibility of ESG, who is somebody like a CFO or HR head or a legal and compliance head or a risk head, becomes can take the ESG responsibility additionally, because our companies are not of a very huge size, number one, and most of these would have good practices already. It is only to ensure that there is a kind of a day-to-day focus on the various aspects of ESG that an ESG head is around. It serves the purpose. Also to ensure that all the KPIs of the respective responsibilities are also detailed well. In order to ensure that seriousness, accountability, responsibility, and that it is done right, we have also been encouraging our companies to make it part of their internal audit scope. So what it entails, two things. One is that it brings seriousness, and more importantly, then it gets reported to the board, because internal audit reports into the audit committee, and audit committee in terms is actually the board committee. So that way it gets highlighted, number one. Number two, it also helps the company prepare for their future when they want to come out with a sustainability report, which is externally assured. So they already have a system and process in place, which will make their ESG data more credible. So some of the recent initiatives that we have had last 18-20 months have been very, very fulfilling. We have conducted a firm-wide ESG surveys. Let me remind the audience that we adopted our ESG policy only in 2018, and we are in 2021, and all the achievements that we have had last 3.5 years. Most of it is actually last about 12 to 18 months. So we conducted an internal survey to identify material ESG priorities and also the way forward strategy. It helped us because we had the buy-in from the firm. We had the buy-in from all our partner company CEOs and their leadership teams. So we could finalize our long-term strategy and portfolio-wide KPIs as well. When we developed our first ESG policy, our own operations was not thought to be responsible for ESG, but as we understood ESG better and better, actually we also are responsible corporate, and we should have ESG integrated into our own operations. So we have now developed KPIs for our own operations as well. We have now, as I said, long-term ESG strategy to align with our implementation experience, our UNPRI mandate, and learning from the best global practices. We also developed our thought and approach to address climate risk, being UNPRI signatory, which has subsumed TCFD recommendations, and majority of TCFD recommendations have are actually a core criteria in the reporting framework. That means that the UNPRI signatories should publicly commit to Paris Agreement, publicly commit to TCFD, start to monitor climate risk into their portfolio, and also build TCFD reporting structure in their own operation and in their partner companies. So we are into that process. We have developed a climate risk assessment tool with the help of PwC, which has been our partner in most of these endeavors, in order to understand the climate risk resilience of our portfolio and the way forward to integrate climate risk diligence in our investments. And as I said earlier, that while our partner companies, majority of them, I would say 90-95% of them, have very small carbon footprint, but all of them, and therefore may not necessarily have a lot of transition risk, but almost all of them would have tremendous physical risk. All of us have. And we have started to see for the last 3-4 years the ferocity, the intensity of all the climate events that are happening. So it is better to understand how physical risk can derail your supply, derail your operations, how it can impact your offices and your work. So how to integrate physical risk, climate risk into your overall risk management framework. We published our first ESG report. I'm very happy to share. I'm sure many of you would know, and therefore became the first homegrown private equity fund to have issued our first ESG report. And I'm very happy, though Anand said in the beginning that both of them are carbon neutral. We are not comparable to Infosys. Infosys' achievement would be far bigger, but in our own little way, we have shown our commitment, both as an organization, as an investor, and also to set trend amongst our partners. We are now carbon neutral since inception of our operation. So we have estimated our carbon footprint from 2000 to 2021 with the help of PwC and the GHG protocol. And then we also have had an external third party to verify our carbon inventory so as to impart credibility to our entire process. And now we are carbon neutral. And I'd like you to show the carbon neutrality certificate that we have. Yeah. So thank you so much, Anand. And over and above that, just to go back, you need not go back to this slide, but we have now undertaken comprehensive review of our ESG policy because we have learnings of last 3.5 years of our implementation. We have our own operation where we want to integrate ESG. We have a private credit, another asset class around the corner. We are UNPRI signatory, so there are mandates arising out of it. The climate risk part that needs to be integrated into our overall ESG thought process. And more importantly, and most importantly, I would say we have better understanding of ESG and the best global practices. Therefore, our ESG strategy, ESG policy is undergoing a complete change. Another important thing that we are doing is also to develop an ESG maturity or assessment tool. And we want to see, it's not a diligence tool, but it is actually a maturity tool basis all the KPIs that we think are important. So as you have as a financial investor, as you have financial targets, so we want to have ESG targets as you onboard a company as to where we want them to be 5 years down the line and keep measuring them on the ESG maturity tool. And the same tool also would help us in compiling reports from our partners and also reporting into our investors, our LPs. Thank you. I'll go very quickly. I know we have been running out of time. So these are some of the KPIs that we have finalized for our own operation. And all of these come from our strong belief that we should continue to be resource efficient. We should continue to ensure that our carbon footprint is minimized. We should ensure that our waste does not go to landfill. How we can recycle, we continue to offset. As our commitment to reduce our carbon footprint, our firm has decided that the work from home has become the default. We are expected to be in office only 2 days in a week, thereby significantly reducing our carbon footprint. That is one significant step that the firm has taken to show our commitment to the environment. Same way, the employee satisfaction level, the gender diversity that we are working on, the various wellness and health programs that we run, and the RI trainings. Likewise, in governance, all the relevant policies, the awareness about them, the how we deal with supplier, etc. With the partner companies, we have brought a lot of momentum in last 12 to 15 months. We have conducted multiple surveys, as I said, and we are very happy to see that actually our partner company CEOs subscribe to few of the UN SDGs that we will see how do we map it. We have put now portfolio-wide ESG KPIs, and now framework is being put in place to monitor and report. As I said earlier, climate risk assessment through tool, and we have conducted awareness sessions among our partner companies, CEO and the relevant subsidiaries. And we have also planned an ESG toolkit to help onboard our partner companies in a more comprehensive manner. So these are the KPIs that we have decided basis, again, the baseline materiality survey that we conducted amongst our partner companies, the best practices that we have seen. So we will, at portfolio level, continue to track these and report to our investors and our stakeholders on these KPIs. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Anil, and for a very detailed presentation on your experience. As we summarize this, I would request if Bose and Anil, you could stay on for 10-15 more minutes as we could quickly address the audience questions. I hope that's okay with you, Anil. Bose?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So quickly summarizing from both our presenters, ESG value creation plan, something that I took from Anil's experience on details of functional roles and responsibilities. KPIs seriously that helps in implementation and looking at very, very execution level input. And as Bose said, that this is a video game that one has to enjoy, take the plunge, keep moving, make pacts and grab opportunities. And there is always a next level waiting. So thanks, Bose and Anil once more. Manish, over to you, please.
Yeah. Thank you for giving the investor and the corporate perspective, and thanks, Anand, for the summaries. I think without much ado, we will now move to the Q&A session. And I'll begin with the first question by Rahul Gautam, which says that, do you think we need one reporting framework which captures the assets ESG performance completely rather than having multiple frameworks, specifically because there are overlaps between these? And a similar question on frameworks was by Rohit Khanna. How do you prioritize the elements of the framework? Okay, this is different. So Rohit, I will just quickly take this. How do you prioritize the elements of the framework for ESG implementation is primarily driven by a materiality analysis. And we discussed that in detail on the first webinar, and on the chat window, there's also a link where earlier we discussed in depth on it. So we'll move to the question by Rahul. And we got it last time also. So I would request Bose if you can very quickly take this. Do we need one reporting framework, or these might be multiple frameworks which have overlaps, and not one framework is holistic? So what's your view on that?
Sure. This is one of the most common, suggestions or, expected change in this space. And that change is on the way. I must say today, you're right. Most people start with GRI, then, as you mature, you are, kind of nudged to do TCFD for sure, and maybe SASB. So at COP26, they had announced the financial world is stepping in. The IFRS Foundation has announced the formation of ISSB, which is International Sustainability Standards Board. They are going to, create by next year, this time, we should have a first draft from them. This is going to be a amalgamized reporting framework. And at the back end, many of these other framework creators are collaborating. So change is definitely on the way. And IFRS, who have created the financial reporting framework, is clearly banking on their expertise and creating a new framework. So it is likely to happen, in the next 2-3 years. Maybe we will see next year a draft is expected. 2023, we will see probably some pilots, and by 2025, that may become, the standard to follow.
Well, thank you. In fact, for everyone's information, and if someone from the NWIN team can post that link on the chat group today itself, the GRI came up with the notification where the revised universal standards are now freely available for download, and they will be in fact be there for reporting from 1st Jan 2023, and early adoption is encouraged there. So it's a recent news, well, thanks both, and I'll move on to the next question, which again I would request you to take it by Sri Nagesh. The gist of the question is that how do you ensure that the ESG initiatives that the company takes at the corporate level is disseminated amongst the employees? How do they get trained into what the company is doing? How do they get access to their ESG sustainability reports? So basically, how do you integrate and bind the internal communication between the central team, which is managing the ESG function, and the larger team, specifically in large organizations?
Who is that for?
Sorry?
Who is that question for?
Yeah, this question is for you both, because Sri Nagesh did mention Infosys's example in terms of a large company, and with more than 1 lakh employees. How do you manage this?
We are almost very close to 3 lakhs, by the way.
3 lakhs.
Anyway, I will take that. Like I said, like in many other things dealing with ESG, this is also a journey. I said when I was presenting at the more evolved, mature end of the game, the whole ESG thinking gets embedded into your DNA. That means, your employees. So propagating what you're doing to the employees, that in itself is a journey. Eventually, so it's a two-way traffic. Initially, you solve this information to all the employees through many platforms. Internally, we have Sparsha. There's a blog. People write. I often write. There is an education series. Right now, we are running on climate change. We had some ways, and this is bringing people personal stories, company stories, just educating them. We run sometimes, we have campuses across the country, sort of competitive, something of competitive nature. It could be giving them some energy reduction targets between campuses. So we do, over the years, we have done so many different things we have an eco club. We use many of them as volunteers in some of our programs to help. So, so this process also has taken time. So when we onboard a new employee, they are given an overview of what we do. All these go into that. And so now I said initially it is pushing this information out, and then it becomes seeking this information in, so and then, your people are involved and they want to know what we are doing, how we are doing. Of course, our public disclosures are out there for everyone to access. Sustainability reports, all the other reports that we do are in the public domain. We do other communications. We do a lot of newspaper articles and other, customized reporting. So there is no just one way to do it, especially a company with such large number of people. You have to rely on electronic medium to get your job done. But when you have evolved, there is a significant interest and people are seeking out information, and that's a good place to be.
Thank you, Bose. I hope this answers, Sri Nagesh, your question. And for the benefit of you and everyone, in fact, the third webinar sometime expected in February that we would be doing as part of the series would address the communication challenge for WINI, and which is essentially both internal and external communication. And we address these kind of issues. The next question, Anil, if you can take it, is that's by Mr. Venkat Chalasani. How do you ensure that the board have the right composition, structure, and processes to oversee ESG in the context of long-term value creation? I think you did touch upon this, but if you can, just answer this specifically. So the board structure, process, and composition to oversee ESG, how do you ensure that as an investor?
So at the outset, Manish, first of all, the existing board, how to kind of apprise them of the ESG aspirations of the firm, of the organization. So we ensure that the policy is approved by the board. There is a detailed discussion. Then again, I said in my presentation that it becomes part of internal audit. Why? So that it goes to audit committee and in turn to the board for discussion. There are ways and means by which board can be actually educated on the ESG matters. For us, I won't say that it's impossible, but people will have to wear double hat to ensure that not only ESG but few other factors are there in those board members. Getting an ESG expert as a board member to ensure giving companies assistance or guidance in ESG value creation may not be at this point of maturity of the market, of the companies, may be possible. But what can happen, and I see various training programs all around, from CII, from others. There are training materials for the board, how they can direct the ESG matters in the boards that they sit.
Thank you. In fact, I hope, Mr. Venkat, that this answers. And another follow-up question by him. Again, Anil, if you can address this, that does non-compliance, we did mention in one of your slides around the investment cycle and how ESG is a part of that in terms of its assessment of any potential target company. So does non-compliance to ESG a showstopper for new investments by True North? It's more around screening, how do you treat, what's the threshold that you look at?
So essentially, as I said, ESG is about a step above compliance. If there are environmental, social, and governance laws, regulations, and acts that you need to comply as a corporate, you have to comply. There is no two ways about it. And that gets covered anyways in the legal diligence that we do. And there could be some showstopper if we see that there are repeated non-compliance. Whether a good ESG practice becomes a positive factor in investment, we have not come to that stage yet. that we will, or to value an organization more with our evolved ESG practices. So in sum, I'm sure that any investor or anybody who's putting in money in a potential target will ensure that all the existing laws and regulations and compliances are being followed by them, irrespective of whether ESG or it is not ESG.
Thank you, Anil. There's a question by Shifali Shetty, and it's an interesting question. And it would be great if we can get both or your perspectives, Anil and Bose. That why are policy documents always prioritized during data collection, even though it got released in the earlier or preceding years? So latest information can be updated from a particular year's sustainability or any other CSR or annual report on the company website. So doesn't it affect the ESG report if updated info gets missed from the latest report, and rather the old policy documents get referred? So I think this, but in the question, and you can answer the bigger part of this question, that why the importance on policy rather than on the other hardcore data. But Shifali, probably I'll just take one bit of it. So generally the policy documents always have a date. They have a date of announcement or when the policy was also enforced. So I think that is something that can be taken care of as to whether it is dated or it is current. But I would just take out the bigger question as to how important is a policy compared to on-ground quantifiable data when we are evaluating ESG.
So I think that's pretty, I think, not so difficult to understand. Policy, what does the policy do? It gives you, it sets you on the right path. It gives you direction. And so you take human rights or labor rights or environment or health and safety, policy would capture in probably a very succinct way how you will manage, or it just gives you direction to manage that. And data and the individual programs are actually a subset of that. So it goes both ways. Your program must be aligned to the policy, and the policy will tell you, okay, your program is in accordance and it makes sense. And obviously, policy runs definitely above the individual, KPIs or individual programs around a particular aspect.
Thank you. Anil, there is probably, among the last couple of questions, it's already 5:15. Anil, Rahul Gautam has another question where he mentions that PRI captures the investment life cycle aptly, but does it really reflect the real or correct picture of ESG performance? Since PRI does not look for assured or validated responses, and most of the responses are self-validated, and the report assurance weightage is probably less than 5%. So what is your take on this in terms of PRI's picture of the actual on-ground ESG performance in your portfolio companies?
So at the outset, Manish, PRI is already seriously considering one of the strategic initiatives that they have taken is also to consider to ask the signatories to get it externally assured. And that is not too far away, first of all. Second of all, even if somebody reports into a PRI on a ESG data from their industry company, ultimately it is for the usage of a stakeholder. A stakeholder could possibly be your investor into your fund, your LP, who will look at your transparency report, and basis that, he will also look at few more information as it comes along. So that does not, to my mind, become the basis of a decision by an LP or investor whether how good or bad or credible your ESG processes are. So I would say that this is important, while getting externally assured is important. In fact, we have also put in our ESG strategy how in few years we should actually start to get the important aspects of our UNPRI reporting externally assured. But I would say that the reporting by means, just to sum it up, that it is ultimately the user who is using that data to kind of form an opinion on you. And UNPRI data itself, the data that is submitted to UNPRI itself does not become a kind of a certificate or anything that is taken without any further examination or scrutiny by your intended investors. So I would say that, and UNPRI is also aware that some washing happens, and that is why to kind of encourage better practices, they are also thinking among very many other aspects, like say, as you may know, from 2021, there has been significant change in the reporting structure. And that is why lot of confusion has been created because of that reporting structure. There is no reporting in 2022, maybe first time in UNPRI, the reporting history. That's and it will again regain. And also, Manish, I would like to come back to the earlier question on policy or actual data. You will capture actual data basis your policy. Your policy says what you commit to as materiality. You will not capture every data, or a data in isolation may not show your ESG performance. It is what you have committed in your ESG policy, and commensurate data that you show will establish your credential as ESG achieved.
No, thank you. Absolutely. In fact, we have one comment on the chat box by Ms. Sunila Satrabudev, who did mention that policy indicates commitment. Anyways, we have a few more questions and we will respond to them separately, one to one. I think we'll have to bring an end to the Q&A session now. Apologies for just being a little ahead of time. So thank you all for joining us today and making an extremely engaging session through all the questions. And hope you all have some interesting insights to take back with you. Sincerely thank Bose and Anil for guiding Vinny, and in the process all of us, on this core step of ESG integration, which is the implementation phase. We'll come back in a couple of months with the third edition of this webinar series to check on how Vinny is doing on her ESG rollout efforts, and to help her with enhancing her communication around ESG, both to her internal and external stakeholders. So, well, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.